FABSCRAP is a textile recycling nonprofit. So we work with the fashion, interior, and entertainment industry to recycle and redistribute their textile waste. So the giant pile you see behind us is basically what we have collected. We've been in operation for about 5 years now. This pile, however, is only what we would accumulate in about 5 to 6 months. We are collecting over 6,000 pounds of material per week. We have our volunteer program on the other side here that is sorting through the materials, and they're basically deciding what's recyclable and what's reusable. The majority of the materials we're getting are recyclable smaller swatches of fabric called headers, and those we shred down, we send to a facility to be shredded down into a fiber called shoddy. There is actually a big bale of it behind us if you want to get a look at that later on. And shoddy is used mostly in insulation, so in carpet padding, in walls. We see it industrially in car doors as well. And then we buy it back, so a lot of these shoppers with us can actually use it as a stuffing in their own materials.
So you're open to the public?
Yes, we're open to the public for shopping. A lot of the materials we find in these bags are reusable. So we have a reuse room that's called, we have our thrift store that's called the reuse room, and people are able to shop there throughout the week and find rolls of fabric, any like trims and notions, any materials needed to create a garment we've found in the bags before, and we resell those.
I mean, it's fabulous work that FABSCRAP's doing. How much of the textile waste problem do you feel you're solving, and what else more could be done?
Sure. Sadly, very little compared to what is being wasted globally. It's very little, but even just talking about what's being wasted in New York particularly, there's about 200,000 tons of clothing that's being thrown away, and this is already created garments. It's said that about 40 pounds of waste is created to create 1 pound of finished garments. Exactly. So the waste we're seeing is very, very, very little in compared to what's out there, and we're not even working with all of the brands in New York.
So how do you feel going forward? What else can be done?
Sure. There is a urgent need for policy in how brands and businesses are disposing of their waste. So policy at the government level, also globally, so brands can be responsible for their textile waste, especially financially, where if they're not recycling the materials properly, then they're fined for it. So that's kind of the infrastructure we need to see brands really take accountability and make drastic changes.
Business needs to change and policy needs to change, but how do you feel that individuals can contribute to driving that change?
Sure. There's 2 ways individuals can contribute. I think the first one is advocacy, just demanding more from the brands they buy from and want to support, but also in the way of the materials that they are actually purchasing too, just the awareness of that. You can vote in a way with your dollar and what you're purchasing. There's a lot of people that aren't always going to be able to create their own clothing. They are going to need to shop. There are needs that need to be met. So I feel in that sense, individuals can educate themselves about what brands are really committed to sustainability and support those, but also if they have brands that they shop from that they know aren't committed to sustainability, they can advocate and ask those questions. And brands are really listening at this moment.
And you personally, can you tell us how you choose to dress and where you source your clothes?
Yeah. Since being at FABSCRAP for over a year, almost all of my clothing comes from these bags. We find fully constructed garments here, but previous to that, I loved mending and thrifting anyhow, so thrifting clothing from secondhand shops and fixing clothing that I already really loved to look a little bit different, to add patches or dye different colors is a way that I like to interact with my clothing, but I am also able to sew and completely create garments, so I feel in that way upcycling and creating new garments from thrifted materials is a way that I've been able to incorporate these skills into my own life.
And what's your motivation for that? Obviously, seeing the waste would be part of it, but is it more than that?
Yeah, I think previous to knowing about FABSCRAP, I think I empathize a lot with the work it takes to create clothing. I think I've always been interested in like the process of making clothing, so I know it takes a lot of effort, and I think our way of treating clothing has degraded so much in the past 50 years that allowing myself to emphasize with like a garment worker or someone who's making it has allowed me to better treat my clothing, or to keep clothing in circulation in my life longer.
What about the well-being benefits of being able to express your individuality and your personality?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of fun in that as well. And I think we like to upgrade our closet every now and then, and that's totally fine. But we have all the materials needed already, and being able to express yourself in a way that isn't harming other people, the planet, is super important. So I do find it meaningful to be able to express myself in a way that I think is also continuing to have clothing in circulation.
Do you get calming benefits out of making, or?
Yeah. I think in mending there's a lot of calming. There's also a lot of like pride and happiness in seeing something that didn't exist before, but now it does. And it's exactly what you thought it was going to be, or it actually looks completely different than what you thought it was going to be. And both are really fun experiences.